An eyeball covered by a red no sign spins into view. White text on a black background reads, Mason in the dark. A blind man's journey through the wacky world of reading, writing, and other silly bollocks. Brought to you from beyond the black screen. Cut to black. Hello everyone. Mason here. How you doing? I'm alive. I noticed it's been a while since I did a book review. In fact, it's been a while since I put out a video in general. Time management. I'm not good at it. Listen, when I first started this channel, I never thought that I would end up being a writer and a narrator. And I'm sure you can tell by the fact that I had to do a stupid voice while I said that I still struggle with imposter syndrome. 2023's just flown by. 1 minute it was January and I'm like, but May's so far away, I can't wait for the release of Half Human Heroes. And now it's like November and I just can't figure out how we got here. Actually, speaking of November, today is the saddest day of the year for me. Bonfire night. Remember the 5th of November. How could I forget? I don't get to appreciate the pretty colours, but I have to listen to the explosions. I know it won't be bonfire night by the time this is uploaded, but I had to get that off my chest. Anyway, the reason I've been a bit quiet recently is because I've been very busy, and as I mentioned, time management is not my strength. In terms of my writing, I've been working on some stuff that I'm not ready to talk about yet, and I've also been continuing my work on Monsters Within, which is my commission project for Katerina the Bookworm. I'm a bloody perfectionist, and I overthink everything. Due to the intensive nature of my process, my recording sessions take much longer than I would like them to. Once I'm done with one project, I feel the need to move on to the next one, which leaves me with very little time for average content, like book reviews. There's a few problems when it comes to book reviews. Firstly, I'm a very, very picky reader, both in terms of the actual book and its narrator. It's actually pretty rare that I read a book I thoroughly enjoyed, and ironically, despite the fact they do much better, I don't really like putting out negative reviews. I wish I was a shouty rage monster. That'd make things so much easier. If I'm being totally honest, 9 times out of 10 when I finish a book, my opinions on it are middling to negative. I inevitably end up deciding that what I have to say isn't worth saying, especially considering it'll take time away from my writing, so I don't, but that's not how being a booktuber works, is it? Which brings me to the point. Today I'm talking about Everyone in My Family Has Killed Someone, written by Benjamin Stevenson and narrated by Barton Welch. The second book in this series, Everyone on This Train is a Suspect, is currently available for pre-order, so to help me decide whether or not I want to read that, I'm reading the first one because that's how series work. Everyone in My Family Has Killed Someone captured my attention right away. It starts with a fourth wall breaking introduction by the protagonist and narrator, Ernest Cunningham. I've got to say this up front. I think you're going to get more out of this if you're a fan of the mystery genre, especially the Golden Age mysteries. Chaz, I'm looking at you. Ernest is an author who writes books about writing murder mysteries. The opening is very tongue-in-cheek, with Ernie commenting on the state of the genre these days, and since he's a fan of the Golden Era mysteries, he promises to follow Ronald Knox's 10 Commandments, play fair, and be a reliable narrator. To prove that he's going to keep that promise, Ernie spoils the chapters in which a death will take place. Now, as a general rule of thumb, I think it's fair to say that anyone who insists they are trustworthy is not to be trusted. But I decided to give Ernie the benefit of the doubt when the first death occurs right on cue. To be honest, that was a good start for me. I've got a soft spot for a narrator that breaks the fourth wall, so I found it endearing. As I'm sure you know by now, I'm pretty familiar with the mystery thriller genre at this point. At the time of writing this portion of the script, I'd blown through the first third of the book, and there'd been quite a few meta jokes poking fun at the common tropes and cliches you find in the modern murder mystery. Ernie/Benjamin Stevenson makes some good points too. I realise it would make sense to provide some examples here, but I'm not going to because one of the vital components of humour is surprise. I feel like I once heard a wise man say that. It might have been Phil from Modern Family. I wouldn't be surprised. That guy knows his way around a joke. As a quick side note, I actually do find Phil really funny, which worries me. I'm sort of scared that now that I'm about to hit 30, I've grown into dad humour, without being a dad. Anyway, I will admit that I think Barton Welch has a reading a book style of narration. Do you get what I mean by that? The books I tend to enjoy are the ones that are narrated by someone who makes me forget I'm listening to a story. They embody the characters so effectively that I forget they're just a humble narrator. However, sometimes it does feel like a narrator is just reading a book to you. That is the case with Barton Welch, but for once, I actually think it's beneficial. It suits the framing device of this being a book written by Ernie. Stevenson utilises clear, concise imagery that I find incredibly easy to visualise. It's so vivid that I can picture exactly how it would look as a TV show. I admire someone who's able to craft such a tangible scene in so few words. The thing I really like about it is that it showcases Stevenson's style, but because Ernie is the in-world author of Everyone in My Family Has Killed Someone, it also reveals aspects of his personality. The descriptions, and the prose in general, are peppered with dark humour, meta-commentary, foreshadowing and dramatic irony, which makes every word worth listening to. I was never bored, I never zoned out. At some point I realised I'd listened to 2.5 hours and it did not feel that long. By the 3-hour mark, which is roughly a third of the book, I felt Stevenson was doing an excellent job. Though I was initially somewhat intimidated by the book's relatively large cast, it really wasn't a problem. I felt, for the most part, that I had all the necessary background information and I knew who everyone was. I understood and was invested in the central conflict. Stevenson had done a great job of fleshing out the Cunningham family fairly quickly and establishing their interpersonal dynamics without ever straying into a boring exposition dump. I was impressed with the dialogue, which had been smooth and natural, and Barton Welch had done a decent job of varying the voices, so it was easy to follow the flow of conversation, which helped even more with the TV show in my head thing. I stopped listening right as a new character arrived, and to be honest, Stevenson's execution of the build to that moment was pretty effective. He'd built enough credit for it to feel like a dramatic "here we go" moment, and left me feeling optimistic about what was to come. Fortunately, some witty foreshadowing followed by a scene that ramps up the dramatic tension nicely drew me straight back in. The author side of my brain got a kick out of Ernie giving us the name of a character before they introduced themselves, because it wasn't going to be long before they did so, and repeatedly using their placeholder title was bugging him. I relate to that so much. I'm not going to lie, it is frustrating knowing the name of a character when nobody else does yet, so I have to refer to them as the bartender over and over again, even though I know their name is... Peter Smith? There's a whole section where Ernie gives us a recap. He gives us the option to skip it if we wish to do so. I didn't, personally, and rather than it feeling redundant, it's actually quite entertaining. It's not like it's useless either. I think it was a great way to make sure that we, as the audience, are up to speed with the case. At the end of the day, by this point there's been quite a lot of information. The recap re-establishes all the evidence/clues that we've had so far whilst sprinkling in a few new ones. Don't get me wrong, it could have easily been a clunky misfire in the hands of another author, but in my opinion, Stevenson sticks the landing. It's definitely a personal taste thing though, I could see people being frustrated by it. Ironically, I wasn't trying too hard to solve this case. Thrillers are so often designed to have authors sucker punch you with an unexpected twist, whether they make sense or not. But this time around, even though Ernie is laying out the case piece by piece, and I definitely think it's possible to work it all out, I was just along for the ride. It never felt to me as though Stevenson waited too long to do anything. The plot doesn't exactly have a relentless pace, but it definitely doesn't drag its feet either. I can be an impatient reader. If there's a lull in the action, my mind will wander, most likely to what I'm going to write next, but this kept my attention the entire time. The plot revolves around the Cunningham family reunion, and in my opinion the cast all have recognisable, distinguishing features that make them easy to remember. The thing is, reliable or not, Ernie is a fallible human being, and the presentation of the characters is filtered through his perception of them, and things aren't always the way they seem. I think that was a really effective approach because it leaves plenty of room for character development, and as the plot progresses we discover new facets of their personalities that shed light on their backstory and motivations. It allows for a significant shift in perspective as Ernie, and therefore we, learn more about these characters who, for better or worse, may have been misjudged in one way or another. I reckon if you're the sort of reader who likes to tab and reference as they go, you'll have fun with this. Ernie invites you to do so, and as part of his role as the reliable narrator, he even provides page numbers so you can fact check him. Robert Knox's 10 Commandments of detective fiction are referenced from time to time as Ernie explains how and why they relate to what's going on. It could easily have been obnoxious, but I felt Stevenson nailed it. I love how, right before everything is laid out on the table, the clues in their entirety are presented to us so that we can go away and think about it if we want to. I would really like to tell you that I sat there and pieced it all together, but I didn't. I was very close though. I made 2 guesses which are individually wrong, but they do combine to make the right answer. I thought the unmasking scene, which I say figuratively because the killer wasn't actually wearing a mask, was really well done. The snarky, "yeah mate, I know" side of my brain switched itself off, and I just enjoyed the experience of Ernie unpacking what seemed to be a fairly solid case. Whilst the actual reveal of the killer is cliched, there's no denying, given the framing device and gimmick of the book, that that was done on purpose. Whether that's a good or bad thing is sort of up to you. The only plot hole I can think of, and it's definitely a nitpick, is that Ernie totally throws a member of his family under the bus with this. We're supposed to think of Everyone in My Family Has Killed Someone as a novel written by Ernie, and whilst he has changed some of the names, the publication of this book would definitely lead to some undesirable consequences for said character. All in all, I definitely think this is worth a read. It's not going to blow your mind or change your life, but it's easy, fun, well executed. Ernest is a fairly likeable protagonist. If you enjoy detective fiction and self-aware humour, I'm reasonably confident you're going to have a good time. I'll almost certainly end up reading Everyone on This Train as a suspect, and whilst I am concerned it won't recapture the magic of this first one, only time will tell. Have you enjoyed this video? If so, all the relevant buttons are just sitting there waiting to be pressed, and if you don't press at least one of them, I'll feed you to a genetically mutated giant chicken. It's scarier than it sounds. If you've got thoughts to share, you know where the comments section is, and all the links to my social media can be found in the description. Thanks ever so much for spending time with me today, guys. Until next time, take care. For now I'm off, and you should have a good one.